The 2026 NFL Draft Board just took a shape that nobody expected, and the ripple effects of what happened in the first round are going to define how we build this roster for the next 5 years. Welcome to Bears News Fan Report, your home for breaking updates, in-depth analysis, and everything you need to know about our Chicago Bears. I'm bringing you the news that matters every single day, and today I've got the complete breakdown of how the draft unfolded, where the Bears made their move, and why the decisions made by other teams in our range are going to impact our championship window more than most fans realize right now. Something shifted in how NFL teams are approaching roster construction in 2026, and you can see it crystal clear when you look at how aggressively organizations position themselves to grab cornerstone players at premium positions. This isn't just about quarterbacks going early anymore. This is about a fundamental change in philosophy, where teams are willing to pay any price to secure the exact pieces they believe can transform their franchises. That philosophy created opportunities, created threats, and created a draft landscape that forced Ryan Poles and the Bears' decision-makers to navigate some incredibly complex scenarios. Let me walk you through how this first round developed, because understanding the context is absolutely essential to grasping why what the Bears did at pick 25 represents such a critical moment for this franchise. The top of this draft was dominated by quarterback movement in ways we haven't seen in recent years. The Jets made the boldest leap imaginable, trading up to the number 1 overall pick to grab Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana. That's a franchise that's desperate for stability under center, and they paid whatever price was necessary to get their guy. The Raiders followed immediately at 2 with Dante Moore from Oregon, signaling that Pete Carroll isn't messing around with his rebuild in Las Vegas. But here's where it gets interesting for us as Bears fans. Once those first 2 quarterbacks came off the board, the draft shifted dramatically toward defense and the trenches. Tennessee grabbed Arvil Reese, the dominant linebacker from Ohio State, who's going to terrorize NFC North offenses for years. Cleveland went offensive firepower with Carnell Tate at 4, adding a physical receiver who can win regardless of quarterback play. The Giants traded back into the top 5 for Jordan Tyson, and then we saw a run on offensive tackles that reshaped the entire first round. Arizona took Spencer Fano from Utah at 6. New Orleans grabbed Francis Mauigoa at 7. And suddenly the tackle market that everyone expected to be deep started evaporating faster than anyone anticipated. That's crucial context for what I'm about to tell you, because the Bears were watching that position drain away while sitting at pick 25, knowing that offensive line depth is something this franchise has prioritized under Poles' leadership. Every tackle that came off the board between pick 6 and 27 represented one fewer option for us if we decided to address that position. The middle of the first round continued the defensive trend with Washington taking Reuben Bain at 8, Cincinnati grabbing David Bailey at 9, and the Rams making a massive move for Caleb Downs at 10. That's 3 straight edge rushers and a safety who's being compared to the best in the game. Kansas City added Jeremiah Love to give Mahomes another weapon. Minnesota went cornerback with Mansour Delane, and the defensive run just kept going. Miami took Keldrick Falk, Dallas grabbed Sonny Styles, Baltimore went interior with Peter Woods, and Carolina added Cassius Howell. That's a whole lot of defense coming off the board in rapid succession. Detroit reinforced their offensive line at 17 with Caden Proctor, a massive tackle from Alabama who fits their physical identity perfectly. The Jets added Mekhi Lemon at 18 after securing their quarterback earlier. Tampa took tight end Kenyon Sadiq at 19, and Pittsburgh grabbed Denzel Boston at 20. Philadelphia went cornerback with Jermad McCoy at 21. Houston fortified the interior with Caleb Banks at 22, and Dallas doubled down on pass rush with T.J. Parker at 23. Buffalo took Avion Turrell at 24, and suddenly we're on the clock at pick 25. Ryan Poles and the Bears Brain Trust had been watching this entire sequence unfold with a very specific strategy in mind. They knew going into this draft that adding explosiveness off the edge was a priority, that finding players who could generate consistent pressure on opposing quarterbacks was essential to taking the next step defensively. They'd evaluated every edge rusher in this class thoroughly. They'd identified the prospects whose athletic profiles and developmental trajectories matched what Matt Eberflus wants to build on defense. And they'd done their homework on which players would still be available when their pick came up. At 25, the Bears selected Romelo Height from Texas Tech. This is a developmental edge rusher with legitimate length and upside, a player who gives Chicago another piece to pair with their existing front seven. Height brings the kind of athletic tools that can be molded into an impact player with proper coaching and development time. He's not the finished product right now, but that's exactly what the Bears were targeting at this point in the first round. They wanted a player with a high ceiling who could grow into a major contributor over the next 2 to 3 seasons while learning behind established veterans. Height's tape shows a player who can bend around the edge, who has the length to disrupt passing lanes, who plays with motor and determination on every snap. At Texas Tech, he demonstrated the kind of relentless pursuit that defensive coordinators love, the ability to chase plays sideline to sideline and never give up on a rep. His pass rush arsenal is still developing. He needs to add more moves and counters to his repertoire, but the foundational traits are absolutely there. Speed, length, flexibility, and that intangible hunger to get to the quarterback that you can't teach. From a strategic standpoint, this pick makes tremendous sense for where the Bears are as a franchise. We're building a defense that can compete with the explosive offenses in our division and across the NFC. Adding another edge rusher who can develop into a rotation piece and potentially a starter gives Eberflus more flexibility in how he constructs his pass rush packages. It creates competition in the defensive room, it provides insurance against injury, and it signals that the organization is committed to building through the trenches on both sides of the ball. But here's where the draft gets really interesting from a Bears perspective, and this is the part that's going to have long-term implications for our roster construction. Right after we took Height at 25, the Chargers grabbed guard Oliva Vega-Ioane at 26, the 49ers took interior defender Caden McDonald at 27, and then Cleveland made a move that's going to impact the tackle market for years. With the 28th pick acquired from Jacksonville, the Browns selected Caleb Lomu, a tackle out of Utah who was widely viewed as one of the better prospects still available at the position. Cleveland's decision to grab Lomu at 28 tells you everything about how they view their offensive line situation and their need to protect their quarterback investment. They had already taken Carnell Tate at 4 to add a weapon on offense, and now they're doubling down on building the infrastructure that makes their passing game work. Lomu is a sturdy, reliable prospect who brings depth and future starting potential. He's not the flashiest player in this draft, but he's exactly the kind of fundamental, sound offensive lineman that can anchor a line for a decade if developed properly. For the Bears, watching Lomu come off the board 3 picks after our selection is significant for a couple reasons. First, it confirms that the tackle market dried up exactly as fast as our scouting department predicted. By the time we were on the clock at 25, the best tackle prospects were already gone. Arizona took Fano at 6, New Orleans grabbed Mauigoa at 7, Detroit reinforced with Proctor at 17, and now Cleveland added Lomu at 28. That's 4 tackles in the first 28 picks, which is a heavy concentration that indicates how much the league values protecting quarterbacks and creating running lanes. Second, Cleveland's willingness to use a first-round pick on a tackle prospect, even after addressing receiver earlier, shows how teams are doubling and tripling down on positions of need, rather than spreading resources across the roster. That's a trend we've seen polls embrace with the Bears as well, the idea that if you identify a critical area of need, you hammer it repeatedly until you've built genuine depth and competition at that spot. We did it with defensive backs We've done it with offensive line in previous years, and now we're doing it with pass rushers. The fact that teams like Cleveland are still investing first-round capital in tackles late in the round also tells you something about next year's draft class and free agency market. If teams are grabbing developmental tackles in the late 20s, that means they're not confident in their ability to find starting caliber players at that position through other means. It drives up the cost in free agency, it makes trades more expensive, and it forces teams to be proactive rather than reactive when building their offensive lines. Looking at how the rest of the first round closed out, New England took cornerback Colton Hood at 29, Seattle grabbed Brandon Sissy at 30, the Rams took a developmental quarterback in Ty Simpson at 31, and Denver closed the round with linebacker C.J. Allen at 32. That's a first round that saw quarterbacks dominate the top, defense and trenches control the middle, and teams addressing depth and development needs at the bottom. It's exactly the kind of draft structure that creates both opportunities and challenges depending on where you're picking. For Bears fans, the takeaway from this draft is that we addressed a genuine need with a high upside prospect while staying true to our organizational philosophy of building through defense and the trenches. Height gives us another weapon in the pass rush arsenal, another player who can develop into an impact contributor, another piece of the puzzle as we construct a defense capable of carrying us deep into January. The fact that we didn't reach for a tackle when the market had already dried up shows discipline and confidence in our existing offensive line depth. I want to hear from Bears Nation on this. Are you excited about the Romelo Height selection and what he brings to our pass rush? Do you think we should have tried to trade up for one of those tackles who came off the board earlier? Or are you confident in our offensive line as currently constructed? How do you feel about Ryan Poles' overall draft strategy of continuing to build the defense while maintaining our offensive infrastructure? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this is the conversation we need to be having as we head into training camp. Looking at this draft with both excitement and realistic expectations, I genuinely believe we made the right call at 25. Height has the tools to become a legitimate difference maker if developed properly, and adding him to a defensive room that already has talent and leadership gives us depth and competition that every championship team needs. The fact that other teams are still burning first-round picks on positions we've already addressed validates the work Poles has done building this roster. We're in a strong position heading into 2026, and this draft class is going to be a big part of that success. Make sure you're subscribed to Bears News Fan Report and hit that notification bell, because I'll be breaking down every single pick from this draft over the coming days. We're going to dive deep into Height's tape, analyze his fit in Eberflus' scheme, compare him to successful edge rushers around the league, and give you the complete scouting report you deserve. Share this video with every Bears fan you know, because we're building something special here in Chicago. Until next time, Bear down.